So.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be a lot of fun.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one.
What's the? Well, I'll ask you once we get started. I want to know what
We're started, man.
Oh, we are started. Oh, okay.
Fucking live.
Ready? I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, there's no rules here, just so you know that.
Okay. All right. Okay. What planet do you have lit up over there?
I don't even know. I like weird, quirky things.
Yeah.
And when in the studio, initially the studio was like this shorter table.
Yeah.
With nothing on it. I was going to come down bare bones, right? I'm going to have like nothing on the walls but film it.
No,
and then I just started adding shit, and then people started to dig it, and I started to like it, and then I had all this Boogie Street stuff. We obviously, right?
Right.
So this thing is, I don't know if it's a planet, I don't know, it's a salt lamp or some shit.
Looks like the moon or Venus or something.
If it's in, like once in a while we'll do I have a theoretical physicist that comes on, we talk about space and parallel universes. We have a UFO show, which is like extremely popular.
Wow.
And nuts and professionally done.
Professionally nuts.
Yeah, and professionally nuts. We have a science guy who also has an interest in UFOs. So I get this really ultra professional approach to it. It's different than like a conspiracy show.
Yeah, right.
So anyways,
right.
But that's what this is. And I don't even know what this is exactly, but it looks cool.
It looks cool. It all looks great.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's it, man. So I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
So seriously, it's 20. We usually don't date the shows, but it's it's the beginning of the summer of 2022, and you're finally able to get back out there and hitting the skins in front of human beings, man.
Yeah.
Now, how long has this been going on? When was was there anything live last year at all for you guys?
What? Here's the odd thing is that it seems like the year. I mean, when did it all start? It's like I'm having a hard time putting together the timeline.
Well, I think
it was officially
March 2020.
2020.
Got shut down. I think.
So that summer, I guess we didn't do much of anything. I think everything got bagged. I mean, that was March,
the summer of 20. Yeah,
of 20.
Yeah.
So I remember
2 weeks to flatten the curve. I was the musician's savior, right?
Yeah,
2 weeks.
it was, yeah. And I was in my car listening to all the news programs going, well, okay, in 2 weeks it'll be over. In 2 weeks it'll be over. I do remember distinctly our last show with Nomad was at the Hollywood Casino, one of the ones in Ohio.
Oh, okay.
And I remember at that time, we were all, kind of giving each other the nervous eye, like, what's going to happen?
Because of what you were hearing.
Because what we're hearing,
Right.
It's like, what's going to happen? And I remember walking out of there and going into a Sheets, like as my routine is after a gig.
Every musician says
Sheets,
that, man.
yeah. It's
Sheets is like
drive home in silence and have something to eat and drink from Sheets.
That's because we're all old now.
Exactly.
See, we were younger. It was like the local
silence.
bar or the dirty bar at the corner of the shopping center or something, right? But now it's fucking Sheets.
It's Sheets. It's just like, silence and like popcorn chicken and an iced tea or something. But I remember walking into the Sheets and people coming in and out, and you start that thought process is like, does this guy have this? Does this, is this going to be the last time I'm going to be in a Sheets or much less at a gig for a little while? And I remember that being the case. And then just moving forward from that, boy, those 2 years it's almost a blur. How little we worked, the 1 year.
So the next year, so 2020, did you folks gig at all?
If we did, if I remember correctly, we had 2 shows.
Wow.
One may have been a wedding in Clarion. And at that point, they were into it to the point where I think if you were still out of like an urban area, people weren't all that concerned about it. And I don't remember a whole lot of concern. But we, I think everybody in the band kind of took to it a little bit differently. I was on the fence, but I'm a caretaker for my mom.
Oh, right on.
So I'm thinking, I can't get them, and my wife has an autoimmune
Well, it's scary
thing,
stuff, man.
Right. So you want to not give in to the fear, but you also want to be smart about it. And, so when the vaccine came, I got the vaccine and the booster and all that.
Of course.
But that year, everything. We were playing every couple months at a place in a casino in Atlantic City, the other casinos, and then all the fairs and festivals that we would normally do. It all went away. It was all gone. And then the next year was a little bit better, but not much. last weekend was the first time I played 4 gigs in a weekend, and I'm still paying for it actually physically.
Right.
It's got to be 2 years since, and last weekend was pretty busy.
Well, 2021, did it start to ramp up then?
It seemed like it did, and again, it's a little bit of a blur. I got to be honest with you. In the meantime, I had my hip replaced.
Wow.
So I was, I was dealing with all that and trying to do PT through it, and that was a pain.
It made sense probably to get it done when you guys were down, right?
Yeah, I figured, and I did it in April after, and I play at a church regularly. I play with New Community Church in Wexford,
right.
And I did it after all the Easter services were done because the music team gets busy, and I figured, well, we'll do it afterward. I get a couple buddies to sub for me, and I got that done. And through that whole thing, everybody in the hospital, you had to social distance and you had to have the mask on.
Yeah.
And they told me that I think I got my first shot.
That had to be like just fucking nuts.
It was
in the
bizarre.
Hospital, seeing all that.
It's just strange. It was. I don't want to go as far as it was surreal, because when you're living in it, you have to. You know what I mean? You're dealing with it. You have to. You don't have a choice. You have to deal with it. This is what it is.
Right.
Let's just deal with it and keep going. But it was strange, and I do remember it, they told me, if you're going to get the vaccine, make sure you do it a couple weeks before you have the surgery, in case you do have some sort of bizarre reaction to it, because they didn't know. I mean, it's, all new, relatively untested. And
right.
So but then that actually went as smooth as it could have gone, other than the recovery. The first couple weeks of the recovery was miserable because I couldn't sleep. It was just hard to sleep. It didn't matter how I moved around or rolled. I was either, like aggravating the joint or leaning on the incision. So, you find this 1 centimeter place where you can get comfortable, and you'd finally doze off, and then you'd move and, so that wasn't fun.
But drumming at Kit is a full contact sport, man. I mean, it's like, I think there's a misconception. Like, you see a guitar player with using both of their arms, and the rest of it's all just emotional, twisting the torso and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Singers doing their thing, and every singer's got their own thing. But a drummer is kind of like, it's all extremities.
It is, but when you're like, I went to school for music, so I studied with, players that knew your technique and how to avoid the bad habits that screw you up. So one of those is just, if you're, is economy of motion. Like, you don't do things that you really don't need to do. You don't need to be flailing all over the place. If you can hit everything from here.
Well, then how did Neil Peart do it?
I don't know. Well, according to him, he did it wrong for a lot of years until he took lessons from Freddie Gruber, and then it kind of turned around. He made everything a little more.
Is that
ergonomic?
Is that when he changed? Is that the gentleman he
changed? He changed
for a short period of time.
Yeah,
he went back to traditional grip.
Yeah, and that whole thing is, that's really a personal preference thing.
But how could you play Rush music with that grip?
I would have a really hard time.
I don't get it.
Again, if we're going down that road, that's like the other.
That's
like
what we do here, man.
I know. It's like, let's talk about COVID, which has its own whole own sort of thing, and then let's talk about traditional versus matched grip, which is
what we do here. That's what we do here. We don't have to get into it deep. I remember him making that change.
He made the change, and I think
mid-90s.
Yeah. Well, that was when he finally got back into playing after the whole thing with his daughter.
Okay,
his
so
wife,
maybe late 90s then.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, late 90s.
And he, I don't know I know he studied with Freddie Gruber, and Freddie changed his whole approach to playing, which makes a lot more sense. Is you're letting everything work for you. But
didn't he go back to his old style?
He went back to probably matched grip, which is actually makes more sense. Okay, and for anybody that's listening, okay, traditional grip was born out of the military. It was born out of the fact that you had a drum on a sling, and for whatever reason they would use the drumming cadence to signal, hey, it's lunchtime, or we're going to do this formation, or hey, we're going to drop some slick rudiments on you before we shoot you with a bunch of muskets, or whatever. Okay, but the thing of it is that the drum would sit on your leg like so. Okay, with a strap on it. It's before all the neat marching harnesses and everything. So the drum was sitting that way. And so it didn't make sense for the drummer to walk around like this the whole time because his shoulder is up in the air, his elbow's up in the air in order to play the drum. Okay. So someone along the way decided, hey, if I hold the stick up like this and I play this way, it makes a lot more sense. So the grip was born out of functionality.
Right.
Okay. If you sat a 5-year-old child down at a set of drums and handed him a pair of sticks, he would do this. So that's the most natural way to hold a pair of sticks, no matter what anybody tells you. Buddy Rich, God rest his soul included, did a whole diatribe about it, and unfortunately he was kind of wrong about it. But Buddy, with those hands, he gets a pass. Okay?
He does get a pass.
He's allowed. He's allowed to say what he wants. But yeah, so that going back to the whole Neil Peart thing was, he was just looking at a way to get to kind of freshen up his approach. And if you watch old videos of, like, say, the old, the Tom Sawyer, the Subdivisions, all this stuff in the early 80s, you could see how he plays into his kit. He plays down into his kit. Late 90s, you watch him play and everything's up here. Okay. Again, it's an economy of motion thing where you're allowing, that
probably helped him as he got older too, right?
It does. It helps a lot when you get older.
Yeah, as opposed to just wasted movement, wasted energy.
And even going, with all the stuff he had, even that does make sense. You could get up there that way and come down, or you could get up there that way and come down. It really, and that's not like I don't bag on anybody's way of playing, because I know guys that can play like that are monstrous players.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of, how long. It's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And it does make, there are some things to it that, like, there's, the way your fulcrum is now this way. And if you twitch your arm, you're basically getting the stick this way. And then you can add your thumb and your finger. And there's some guys online. There's a teacher out in Colorado that does a whole thing on Buddy Rich's left hand. And he shows how Buddy did a thing with his 2 fingers and got these notes that are just going dig 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 dig, and it I can't even, I don't even want to see this. Okay, this is like,
all right, we're gonna come back to drums.
Okay, yeah, let
me go back to the COVID. When you are now playing in front of people again. So what are you seeing? Like, how do you think people are feeling that they're getting back to normal? Do you think there's still some hesitancy?
I think there's
people still kind of looking around.
Yeah, I think there's still a little bit of hesitancy. I think from everybody too. I think, like it because we don't know how to trust this yet. You know what I mean? Is this because you could see the curves if you're watching, okay, we started here, in the winter, and we're kind of here, and now it's kind of starting to tick up again. So there's, I don't know. I'd like to think we're past the worst of it, and that everybody will just decide
for monkeypox.
What's next?
I'm kidding.
Can we?
I'm kidding.
Can we have a couple of years of pestilence free? Yeah,
some normality.
Yeah,
normalcy.
I don't know. I do. I think I'm cautiously optimistic that it's all that everything's coming back to normal. But what was the word? People were using words like pivot and adapt and adjust. I see the smirk on your face.
But it's all semantics.
It is, but you know what? I think that's a thing too. I think it's changed.
The landscape's different now.
It's changed it, and people are a little tighter with budgets. So there's the pie got a little smaller too.
Okay.
The things that we used to count on doing, we can't count. You can't really count on it anymore. You got to pursue it a little harder to make it work. So, I really hope that it does get back to some, I think we're close.
Yeah.
But, after all this, man, who knows?
It's just crazy when you sit and think about I get an outdoor stadium because you're kind of outdoors, but they're holding big indoor concerts now. So we kind of must be somewhat back to normal, right?
I know.
I hope.
I wish I had a better grasp on even just the science of it, because even, we were talking before we got on about, the political and the social ramifications of it, where you've got everybody on every side of it seems to know it all, But in reality,
there's
probably only a few people that really are understanding what this is all about. And
but we're so distrusting of everybody.
Again,
you know what I mean?
Another topic, right?
Yeah,
it's a whole other topic. But I think
that's even tough, probably in bands. Like members of bands probably arguing about stuff. Members of the division's everywhere.
And and you got to respect that, though. You got to respect where everybody is coming from.
Sure.
In the beginning or in the middle of it, I suppose is, people were talking. Well, if you're healthy and you take good care of yourself and you eat right and all
that's
that,
not always the case.
Well, that's the point. It's okay. Well, then you'll if you get it and you're not vaccinated, you're gonna feel like you have a cold or the flu and you'll get over it. But not everybody is perfectly 100% healthy. There were just enough instances of, like, there was a guy on Broadway that 30-year-old dancer fit guy caught it, had both his legs amputated.
Right.
Right. What are you supposed to think? Is it a fear tactic, or is this like legit that this is something that every healthy person needs to kind of have in the back of their mind? It was a hard thing to navigate.
It is, and it actually put, I think, in my opinion, it brought the randomness of life to the forefront, and Americans aren't comfortable with that. We like being told everything's going to be okay.
I certainly do.
I think we all do. Like, everything's going to be okay, and there was a level of predictability, and for most of our, and that's technology. The wealthiest country in the world, we have all that stuff. But I think we're all very vulnerable. Regardless, we just didn't know. You could be the healthiest person or like the worst health person, and it could take either one of you.
That was I think that's the scariest thing of it, is the randomness of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say that, well, that's not necessarily true. But
put things in your favor possibly, but you really, in the end, you really don't know.
So, those same people will tell you could walk out and get hit by a bus, or you could develop some sort of weird cancer or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what do we know about how do you navigate it? Everybody has to navigate it the best they, and like everybody that was a proponent for the vaccine or was proponent, you got to do you do 100%. What you got to do. If you feel that it's not for you, then don't do it. There's no reason to, and if you feel that it is for you, then do it. It's the shaming and
that's all
nonsense. It is a sign on either side. It's like we talk about all this freedom of decision with look at all the issues that we have right now between guns and abortion and all that.
I concur.
So when it comes down to that, if you're you have to decide who you are and decide what is best for you to do.
Is there any moment in time early on, did you have any fears that, hey, our whole reality is going to be changed?
Yes,
I had fears in the beginning that once that I really realized they were going to shut society down, because I thought that was even impossible. Then I thought, man, we might be in for like a multi-year, maybe even a decade worth of this. Because fear took over, of course.
A really good friend of mine, I will not say his name, but he's a fantastic keyboard player in the city. And I remember, we were talking, I was out on my deck on the summer night talking to him about all this kind of stuff. And he said, I said, well, we're just going to have to tread water until this is all done. And at that point in my mind, I was thinking, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And he goes, I hope you're a good swimmer, pal, because I don't see this ending anytime soon. And he was right. He was right about it. Whether he was right about this, the severity of the disease, or what we were going to do societally, I guess. Is that a word? Is that a good word? For a drummer?
We like big words on this show. We always butcher them. A few. We like them, though.
I got to get my phone out and get my little online dictionary. Every now and again,
I'll
come up with a
man. That's cheating.
Okay. But that's what he said. He's like, I hope you can tread water, because this isn't going away anytime soon. And he was right. He was right about that, and I was wrong. I thought, look, this is America. You
can't shut down America.
You can't shut down.
But
you can. Apparently, you can.
Yeah, apparently you can shut society down. And I just had that moment of because England and some of the UK countries some of the European countries were shutting down. And I said to myself, "Oh yeah, could you imagine if if they told us that like society was going to shut down, not like an industry or something, like the whole society
getting shut down."
I said, "How would we?" And I remember saying to myself, "How would we as Americans grapple with that?" Probably not too good.
No,
it did seem like impossible, right? That could never happen. That could never happen. At the time, at least that's how I felt like me in the beginning. Yeah, we'll have to do some restrictions, but there's just no way to shut society.
I mean, I do remember going to the grocery store and being nervous. Right as it started getting bad, and then you started hearing the death count, and then you started all these numbers are starting to pile up, and you got to like force yourself to not look at the numbers. You know, the numbers are damn scary. That's scary. You know, when you start seeing all that. But I remember going to the grocery store and like keeping rubber gloves in my car, and I'm thinking to myself, you're going to the grocery store where they like buy your grown food that you're going to take home and you're going to eat without giving it a second thought.
Oh, I know.
And you've got to go in there now with a mask and gloves and sanitize.
They thought it was contact related initially. Remember?
Yeah, initially. And that's why. That's why. That's why.
I was so happy when they realized that it wasn't. I always, my very non-scientific brain just had a gut feeling it wasn't.
Right.
But it would take a while for us to get to the point where we realized that. I mean, hello.
Yeah, and even the even the airborne concept of it is the viral load. Like what's somebody's viral load at any given time during the day, and how is it really 6 feet? Does how far away are the droplets? And then you get to thinking about all this. I don't like to like poo-poo any idea. You know what I mean? It's like everything has some validity to it.
Sure.
Because there's just enough truth behind some of it. But it's at some point you had to start to wonder, okay, like where are we pulling this information from? Like are they really doing research on monkeys or people or whatever that are like 6 feet away from each other with the air conditioner on, with the ventilation, and it's like, is this really happening?
I don't think the average Joe is ever going to really know the truth. But then again, really know? We probably don't really know the truth about a lot of things.
Again, you could go down the conspiracy rabbit hole. I personally don't.
There's a lot of living out there to do, though, friends. I wouldn't suggest doing that and wasting your time.
No, it does. The timing of it seems a little odd to me. But
if it comes back right before any election, then I'm going to think something isn't right here. If we start getting a huge COVID spike right around end of October this year, I'm going to have to look at you with a crooked eye.
And then I, even recently, I started thinking of, I got a good friend of mine from high school who he's another drummer in a band. Again, won't mention his name. Total free spirit guy, and he's one of these. Are
most of you drummers free spirits?
Not really. I'm a little wound a little bit tighter than the average free spirit. Although I would live vicariously through my buddy.
Right on.
I should mention him because I love him to death. He's Angelo Amantea. He plays for the Borstal Boys. So me and Ange, we played in our first band together in high school. And Ange's just a free spirit, and he will have nothing to do with that like you're spending your time. Yeah. How much of that time, that headspace, do you want to give these things?
Yeah.
And when you could be sitting here having a conversation about it is fine. Sure. But when you walk out of your house and you're how much headspace do you really want to give this? Mm-hmm. And it's important to be responsible, but at some point, we're only here for a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. So how much of your time do you want to spend giving any of that stuff a lot of headspace? It's not too much. I would, and I have that I tend to obsess on that sort of stuff a little bit too much instead of just living. Just you gotta.
All right, right turn. So drums.
Yes. Like, something I know a little bit about.
Yes, you do. What was the first spark for you when you were? Did it happen when you were a kid?
Yeah. I remember it. I can remember that.
Was it
like
a
it was
drummer
yesterday.
or was it a set of drums or a sound you heard?
Here's exactly where it was. Okay, it had to be. So I was born in the last day of 1968, December 31st. Okay, so it had to be somewhere around 73 or 74. I was very young, and I remember watching Sesame Street. Okay, and Stevie Wonder was on, doing Superstitious with his whole band
on Sesame Street.
in that corner, that little area between Hooper's store and I think Susan and Gordon's apartment. You remember? You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So it was Stevie Wonder, and the first thing that I saw was the intro, and the drummer
He's pounding his feet again.
And that was it was like, wide-eyed kind of thing. And I'm like, I want those. Like I want a set of drums. And I could just right away it was something that just clicked. And even after that, I remember going to weddings. Of course, I'm a hunky from Greenfield, and we would have the polka bands playing at the weddings, and I would sit close, like off to the side of where the band was, and watch the drummer. And I remember watching the hi-hat cymbals go up and down. It's fascinating. It's like this mind-blowing thing. It's just there's just two pieces of brass going up and down. What's so fascinating about it? So that, I guess it was, initially I got 2 toy drum sets and played them enough to, immediately stick the sticks through the little paper heads that were on them. And so I asked for a legit drum kit from Santa.
Right.
So my mom,
every parent's worst nightmare.
Exactly. So here's what happens. So my dad was feeling a little tipsy one night, and he was out and about, and he kind of sashayed into a pawn shop and saw a kit of Slingerlands. Okay. For $100. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It was a hi-hat stand with a cheap set of hi-hats,
5-piece,
red sparkle snare drum, and a Marine Pearl giant at the I'm only this big bass drum with a rail console tom-tom on it.
Okay. And
he brings them home. And my mom loses her mind. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? You realize the noise we're going to have. And my father's words to her were, in 2 weeks, by the new year, he'll forget they're even here, and we'll sell them. And that just wasn't the case. Yeah. It was a natural thing almost.
Yeah, it took. Yeah, right on. How old?
Oh, I had to be 5, 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to be that young. And then...
what was the first drummer you took notice of that you wanted to know who?
I think it was Buddy. I think it was Buddy Rich.
Buddy Rich? Because who turned you on to that?
Well, I think it was back when you could still see these guys on, like, variety shows. Like, you could see them on TV.
In the mid-'70s.
Yeah.
Once in a while, though. Rarely, though, right?
And then as I got a little bit...
He was older then, wasn't he?
Well, Buddy passed away in 87. And I can't remember how old he was, but so, back then he was still in his 60s,
right,
but was still
killing it.
Badass. I mean, Buddy that left hand is just monstrous. Yeah. But I remember seeing that it was probably Buddy Rich was the first thing.
Okay.
Or on, like, staying up late enough.
So it wasn't really the music per se, it was actually the drums.
The sight of it, yeah. Okay. It was the sight of it. Okay. And then the next thing has to be, it's got to be Peter Criss.
Oh, yeah.
It would have to be.
Right on.
Because...
do you remember what album?
Oh, well, several. Okay, here's that story, because these are things that you just never get rid of.
All about it.
How's this for Pittsburgh? My cousin Ronnie. Okay.
Every good Pittsburgh story starts out with my cousin Ronnie.
My cousin Ronnie had these Kiss albums in his album crate, right? And that's no lie. He had a crate of albums, and my mom and my aunt and I were visiting over at his apartment. And I remember, because this time
Ronnie was older than you.
Yeah, Ronnie was at least 6 years older than me. Maybe no, he had to be more than that. He had to be older because he was out on his own. So I just remember going through the records, and then I saw Live 2.
Oh, right on. So this would have been late. This would have been late 70s.
So it had to be 80. It had to be 78.
Yeah,
at least
minimum.
77, 78. So I remember opening that up, and like
wait a second. The greatest gatefold
ever, right? And then, then he had the first one, and then he had Rock and Roll Over. Then he had Destroyer.
Wait a second.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. I can't wait to see this. Yeah. Yep.
Open that up and show the people what you're talking about. Yeah, that's like...
I mean, you really... think about like a 7 or 8 year old kid opens this up.
I get it.
And then looks at the back and like, wait a second, what's this all about?
What's
that all about?
What's this shit all about?
Yeah, what's going on here? But yeah, this it was, then he played some of it for me.
Yeah. So Alive 2 was your first intro.
It was probably my first exposure to it. Okay. It was either this or Destroyer. I can't remember. And the Destroyer album cover is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And So yeah, it's like it's a little reverence here for the thing. And then
so awesome.
so then I guess it was it was probably a little earlier than that, because I still have some of my first lesson books, and I used to take lessons at a shop in Wilkinsburg called Fabrizi's.
Okay.
And Derek Edwards used to teach over there. Neil, I'm blanking on your last name. For the love of God, I don't know why. Lenny Rogers, my teacher in college, actually used to teach over there. I didn't take lessons from him there, though. And I remember my first bunch of lessons had to be in 1977, because those are the dates I remember. So at the time I was 7 years old.
Okay.
And then I almost certainly had to have seen this after, because this is 1978 or early or late 1977. Yeah. So then you see that, and it's really, it's 7, 8 year old
we were
kid.
The perfect age.
It's 7, 8 year old kid in the 70s sees this. I mean, and all of the sexual innuendo, everything that everybody called the devil worship, it went right over the head, right? Mm. And you're looking at that going,
it looked like Halloween.
Yeah, I've always thought of it as like 4 superheroes. Like, these are 4 superheroes dressed in this getup, doing this, and all the mystique surrounding it. I mean,
especially because parents hated it. That's why I was attracted to us.
Now, oddly enough, my mom didn't mind it. My dad wasn't a huge fan of it, but he I don't want to say tolerated isn't the right word, because it wasn't like take that stuff down or you're grounded. Yeah. It was more like it kind of a head shake. You know what I mean? And my dad wasn't a man of many words. But what they did like about all of this was that they knew where I was.
Yeah, of course.
And whether they put me on the 3rd floor of our half of the duplex where I grew up. No heat, no air conditioning up on the 3rd floor, but who cares? My drums are up there, the record player's up there, the Kiss records are up there. That's where I'll be. So that's what's really started it. And
so you thought Peter Criss was of influence for you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think I've been seeing a couple drummers that are they're touring country drummers.
Yeah.
And a couple guys that used to play in like Kiss tribute bands that talk about this, about how many people he probably actually really did influence.
Really?
And it's more he may very well be up there with. Maybe not obviously not playing wise, and people bag on him for him not being a good player. But I listen to these records a lot, and when you go back and you revisit them and you compare it to what pop music is today, which is all loops, very few fill-ins, very anything like that.
What was a raw energy?
And you listen to this and you're like, well, the guy's playing. I mean, he's playing some stuff.
And it's weird, like to be specific, people will bag on his playing a lot. Yes, I mean, he wasn't Bonham at that time. He wasn't Moon.
But so what?
But that swing kind of thing he was doing worked for those early Kiss songs. Had they had a different kind of drummer, you're not really entirely sure it would have worked as much.
It wasn't even that he had. It's like, he talks about how much he was into jazz, and I really honestly don't hear a lot of jazz in his.
No, I don't think he ever knew theory. Right?
Yeah, no, I mean,
he pretended to know theory.
And he maybe he could, and if he did, it never manifested itself in any way that
to hear Paul say it.
Well, of course,
he never knew any theory.
Right. But at the same time, you listen to again, me and Ange talk about this a lot. We talk about She, just that slow.
Yeah,
nasty love theme from Kiss, 100,000 years, shuffle.
Good stuff.
I mean, it's not like it's what do I say? It's not rocket surgery.
It's not it's not groundbreaking stuff,
right? But at the same time, it gives a kid a bunch of different stuff to kind of latch onto and start to play along to.
Of
I mean,
course.
think about the first record. You go from something like, what's the first thing you hear on the first record?
Strutter. Right.
Blip, bloop, bloop, bloop. That's the first thing you hear is a drum fill. So the
right.
first thing you're going to play is that. Okay. Right. To his credit, there you go, right out of the gate.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some legendary stuff on there. Yeah. And I don't know why he gets bagged on so much. I guess it's because it's from a technique standpoint.
It's that, and I think it's the gimmick. But if he walked through that door, I'd give him a big hug and say, "Dude, you're like the reason I do this, or at least part of it."
I think everything's timing. Like, I mean, it's I always believed that I never was a big Ace Frehley fan. For it just never resonated with me.
Yeah.
But as I got older, really respected that. First off, he was a better player than I ever gave him credit for.
He really was.
And that sloppy way he plays, that playing slightly behind the beat, like is almost got a Keith Richards kind of vibe to it, just metal, right?
Whether people know it or not, if you listen to the solo in 100,000 Years, he's playing like groups of, what's he doing? He's playing like groups of 4 over groups of 3, and he probably didn't even realize what he was doing. He's like, I just know this lick, and it. Yeah. But when you think about it, it's like he's playing some nasty. There's some nasty stuff he's playing in there
for sure.
And I think whether you're a drummer or a guitar player, you should never limit yourself to just poo-pooing things that you don't like or things that you don't understand. Like I can play jazz. I'm a decent jazz player, but I don't know the history of that like some of my friends.
When you say jazz, you mean like traditional jazz, modern jazz?
Like the old school stuff like Bird and Miles. And I mean, I know it. I know enough of it to play it.
You like modern jazz? Were you ever into that?
It depends on I wouldn't call myself a student of it.
Okay.
The last real thing I got into was probably going like, wow, that's really mind blowing. Was probably the Chick Corea band.
Okay. So let me throw some names out. See what you just give me your impressions if you have any impressions. Okay. Cobham.
Cobham, and believe it or not familiar enough with that. I just listened to Spectrum. I was just going to say that. And what's funny is I forget which song it is on Spectrum, but it might as well be Hot for Teacher. You know what song I'm talking about? I'd have to hear it again, but I'm like, wait a second, Mr. Van Halen, I think probably heard this record. All
right. What about Lenny White from Return to Forever?
No, again, that wasn't stuff that I was into.
You were
that was
a little younger than me.
Yeah, that was like my formative stuff was high school through college. Yeah. And in high school, it was Rush, Kansas.
Right on.
And then some of the metal stuff, the Iron Maiden, and then I was kind of a late getting into Yes.
Got it. Got it.
And
any other, let me ask you this question, like any other guys on your radar, like Steve Gadd or.
Yeah, well, Gadd's been on so much stuff.
Paul Wertico?
Paul Wertico, yeah. What's Peter the album? Erskine. I can't remember the album I have with him. But I have a Al Di Meola record with Steve Gadd on it.
That's my guy.
And Gadd is, and all of them. I mean, it's remarkable. It's like sort of semi-jazz, semi-Latin, semi-fusion, and it's
out of the 80s.
It's called Ritmo de Noche. It's like got a Latin name, and it's a weird. I don't know. It's a weird off. I mean, I remember finding it. I was in college, and someone was like, "Yeah, you should listen to Al."
It's such interesting stuff,
It is,
like,
and it's
for someone who likes a lot of rock music. For me, it was just something different to dive into.
Yeah, and I just listened to a brilliant drummer in Pittsburgh who's Dave Throckmorton. I'm sure you've heard of Dave. Dave just did a podcast, and he threw out a bunch of stuff, and I just listened to a Steve Conn record that has Steve Jordan on it.
Oh, right on.
And Steve Jordan's playing some stuff that you wouldn't think he played, because Steve's known for the big, fun backbeat and making you shake your butt and all that, but he plays some stuff on there that's really nice. My problem in I would say my almost, not necessarily a downfall, but a fault, was that by the time I got into being formative, I started working a lot. And then when you, or by the time you're ready to become like, okay, now I've got a chance to dive in and really become, where you really start to grow and develop, I started working like crazy.
Yeah.
And so I was more like, when I find something, I'll latch onto it for a little while, take what I need from it, and then move on to the next thing. Like the Chick Corea era with like Dave Weckl stuff.
Oh yeah.
Weckl, when I heard that, it was like seeing it like new colors. I mean, it was like what in the world is this guy doing?
Mm-hmm. Why do you think? Let me ask you this. I guess it's really mathematics. I get it. Modern jazz has got a very small. Why do you think there's rarely ever crossover appeal? I mean, because I always look at these kids that love these heavy metal shredders and the complexity of it all, and a lot of that craziness without a lot of the distortion is found in modern jazz, but they don't search it out. I never understood why that was.
I think probably because it's not cool. I mean, when I was 13, I wasn't listening to jazz. I was listening to, Journey and Kiss and Styx and Boston.
I get it. Yeah.
So I think you have to, I was lucky enough to go to at Duquesne where people were turning you on to that stuff. They were turning you on to the Yellow Jackets and Spyro Gyra and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And again, I don't play like that, because I didn't find myself in enough situations to become a fusion drummer.
Got it.
I'm a, what did like Rocky Balboa say? He was like, I'm a ham and egger. I'm kind of like that. I just like to
what
to
you
play.
dig, though. You know inside what you really like and resonates with you.
I love bebop. I love Art Blakey. I love Elvin Jones. I love, one of my favorite records. We were pointing at the Paul Stanley record over there. There's one called The Theory of Art. It's kind of an off release. I think it was actually A Night in Tunisia. And then it was repackaged as the Theory of Art, or parts of those or like certain songs were taken and it was repackaged. How they they do it overseas or something, and it's a different title or a different track listing or something. But right off the bat is Night in Tunisia, and it's him and the band. They're all doing percussion, and it's this Latin thing. I love that kind of bebop. That's the stuff I could sit and play with guys, all night.
Right.
But I don't do it. I don't do it a lot. You know what I mean? So I don't ever claim to be an expert at anything.
Do you think? Do you feel like modern jazz was more attractive to fellow musicians?
Yeah.
You think?
Well, I think you have to be able to understand it first. If you're not constantly,
is that required though? No. The reason I say that is because I'm far from an accomplished guitar player, but I had not taken guitar seriously to the mid '90s. But I had found modern jazz like in the late '80s.
Yeah.
So before I was really a quote unquote musician, I had appreciation for it.
Yeah.
The complexity of it, the weirdness of it, it all kind of. I don't know, but maybe I'm just weird. But I didn't find it a stretch to listen to Al Di Meola, Pat Metheny, the Rippingtons. I didn't find that was more mainstream, but. I didn't find that a stretch, though.
But it was, even for me to speak on that, it wouldn't be, I'd be kind of stepping out of my lane a little bit, because I like pop music. I like stuff that people can get up and dance to. And, you think about the drummers that did that sort of stuff. You think about Steve Gadd, who did it, but Gadd could do all that.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Beccaro could do all that, but primarily known for Rosanna and Africa and the stuff he did with, Michael McDonald and Steely Dan. And those were the guys that I kind of gravitated more to. And it could very well be because of what I grew up listening to. My dad did. He grew up listening to Chicago, like around the house when I was young. Before we got into Kiss, it was Blood, Sweat, and Tears, who I love. Bobby Colomby, dynamite drummer, and then he covered a lot of that stuff. He could do straight ahead rock, pop, funk, and then what was the album we had? New Blood. And at the end, they go off into Maiden Voyage, and they're swinging their butts off at the end of this. And it's like, and I would listen to it and not really think about what you're like 5-6 years old. You don't know what jazz is, but you're just listening. You're just listening. You're like, wow, listen to the drummer. He's playing here. He's soloing.
We lose that somehow, right?
And I think we need, the older I get, and again, not having the time. It would be nice to have that kind of innocence again, to just be able to listen and appreciate what it is that you're hearing, but it's hard to do when you're like right now, I've got a sub gig I got to prep for. I just started playing with a Guns N' Roses tribute band. And again, our friend Matt Muckle referenced me for that. Thank you, Matt. And so I've been, I've learned in that material, and I even told those guys, I'm like, look, I can't get to this until after Easter, because the church I play at, we're busy every week with not every week with new music, but then you're dealing with, as a drummer nowadays, you also have to deal with technology. I'm a big user of Ableton Live, a rolling sample pad, and so you have to, you start incorporating that into everything. It's so much more complex now. It's you have to. At least I think everybody, and again, I have friends of mine that will poo-poo this idea, but I think you have to embrace a little bit of it, because it's where music is now. It's not going away anytime soon. If you want to work, and you don't want to be limited in the things that you do, you have to embrace that sort of stuff. Yeah. You can't just slough it off.
Well, you limit your audience, your potential audience. Right?
Yeah. The thing, as we're kind of navigating through this conversation, I remember
we don't navigate. We're
just like no GPS, no map, just start driving.
Nope.
The first time I realized how widespread the use of it was I got to witness Shania Twain's sound check.
Oh, right on.
And the band they had there were like, including her, there were like 9 people up there.
Yeah.
It was in the round at the arena, and Mutt Lange was there.
Oh yeah.
He was up.
Is that when he was married to her?
Yeah, he was up in the
He knows a little bit about production, huh?
Well, the fiddle player goes to me, I guess there's the $1 billion man up there at the console. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the same. It's like kind of weird to just be in the same building with someone like that. But I remember listening to their sound check and again, this may be telling tales out of school a little bit, but they had a lot of canned stuff. And it made me wonder, like, why does she need all that? I mean, she's got a whole band up there. Every instrument is covered and then some. But when you saw the show, you realized how big it was, Def Leppard,
how full it was.
Yeah, Def Leppard comes to mind. Like, I remember seeing them on the Hysteria tour, and that was after, Rick lost his arm. And, I remember them saying that there were a few shows at the beginning where they had to record, they had to use some stuff, and they had to use some tracks of his drum. He just couldn't cut. I mean, he's brand new to having to adjust. Can you imagine? And people, there's all the jokes of the, the one-armed drummer and stuff. But, when you come to think of
what he did,
devastating, and you have to deal with that, and you're going to try to come back and go out in front of.
Think about the love his bandmates had for him.
Exactly.
To accept him.
You
and,
talk
and
about
to, be okay with that. Right?
And whether or not it was, whether or not there were a lot of drums pre-recorded for the show,
there would have to
have been, especially at the beginning.
That's almost understandable.
At the beginning. And then he eventually, he was saying, when I was in the hospital, I thought, well, he grew up, from what I remember reading about him, it's like when we were taking lessons and you would go to the ride cymbal, you would play whatever ride cymbal, whether it was a swing pattern or a straight rock or eighth notes or whatever. You were always following 2 and 4. If you were just playing a backbeat, you're always following it with your hi-hat.
Of course.
And his thought was, well, I've always been doing this, so what if I could rig up something that would just trigger the snare drum on 2 and 4? At the very least, I could get through these songs and play. Just play
100%.
Just again, boom, thwack, and get through it. Then he also decided, well, if I have a couple other pedals, I can trigger the tom-toms.
Absolutely.
And stuff. And again, whether or not
it's a whole nother skill set.
It is. And whether or not, I don't know, I don't know anybody that ever teched for them, or I don't know anybody that ever, was on the road with them to know. But it doesn't matter. The fact that you can watch somebody
why
up
should it matter?
It shouldn't matter. You talk about just an unbelievable pair that he had to get up there. Pair of stones, not arms, obviously. That's my awful Def Leppard joke. But seriously, I mean, it's just it's a great thing that he did, that he was able to do it, and like you said, that the band let him do it. We're not gonna leave you out there. You're back.
That's impressive to me.
It really is, man.
Yeah, it stands the test of time, and that's the thing about their records.
It's one of those things where you hear a song. And not even a Kiss song, and you're immediately transported back. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I saw this.
Well, yeah, it's almost like I think for me, it was Destroyer was the first. And some kid brought over Rush 2112 and Destroyer the same day, and my life just completely changed. And both of them were so different and weird, but I was like, wow, what the fuck is this? On a note about 2112, I used to work in a restaurant called Big Jim's. It's down in Greenfield. There's a plug for Big Jim's. If you're ever down in Greenfield, definitely go eat there. The food it's amazing, giant portion of food. But I was a dishwasher and a pizza cook when I was 13, 14, 15. Paying to go to Central Catholic and all that sort of stuff. And one of the guys that was older than me, he was probably 18, 19.
he knew that I was a drummer, and he said, well, you come and see me when you can play side one of 2112. And I had just started at that time. I just started getting into Rush.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I'd found, what did I find? With Rush, I first found Moving Pictures. I think that was the first thing I found.
So you didn't get
Rush
them
was
like
late
81,
too.
82.
Yeah, and even then I was already, I was in high school.
Wow.
I'm 13. I'm in high school, so that's 82, 83. So
Signal's even out by then.
Yeah, so I was just fine. Like a lot of, and even like the out stuff, like even like Iron Maiden and stuff like that. I was just really kind of finding it when I got into high school.
Okay,
because I went to a small Catholic school, grade school, so you didn't really have, I knew what this was,
right,
and I knew what Journey was a little bit,
and
this the stuff that my dad played around the house. But then you get out, you step out into that big high school world, and you meet all these high school people, right? And you start going to record stores on the weekend, and you start buying the pins that go on your denim jacket, right? But yeah, so that's when I found Rush, and the guy said, you'll be something when you can play side one of 2112. And like you said, challenge accepted, my friend. So I went and learned it. And Neil's stuff is honestly, what Neil's stuff is in its complexity is its parts. It's not that it's particularly difficult to play. It's just the fact that somebody came up with these parts. Like that was his creative thing.
Yeah, creating it.
Right. Where, and of course all the time signature changes and stuff. And like I said, it's nothing that anybody can't do. It's just that it's,
what did he say in that documentary? He says it's so hard to play 21.
Tom Sawyer
correctly.
Yeah,
and once in a while he'll do it.
Yeah,
flawlessly. He'll get off on that.
Yeah,
right?
And it was. I remember, at that point you're starting to get, when you're getting into the teenager, that's all you do. That's all you're doing is you're just playing. So you're figuring it out, you're learning it, and you're not really thinking whether or not you have it 100% right. But you're just doing it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to add rototoms over here so I have all his concert toms. I'm going to beg my father to buy me another bass drum so I have 2 bass drums. I'm going to mutt this kid up so that it looks like I'm going to hang bar chimes from the ceiling and all this.
Awesome,
yeah,
man.
It's great,
Awesome.
And but that's the thing is that sort of stuff, it lights you up, and and you just go in. And you don't think, you're just playing it. Like I would never chart any of that stuff out. I mean, now, when I'm subbing gigs and stuff, I mean, I have to, that's the nice thing about being able to read music is that you get, Dave Weckl, drummer, said his best reasoning for knowing how to read is you get to the music right away. You get to it immediately. Like when you can decipher what you're seeing there and you have any kind of ability, then it doesn't matter whether you're a rock guy, a jazz guy, funk guy, whatever. You can get to the music right away. And even if you flub a couple things, you're still you're not just in the ballpark. You're in the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was a great. But with the Rush stuff, I've never.
So were you like a casual Rush fan, or were you really into them?
I was intense.
So we can have some deep conversations about the catalog.
Well, yeah, a little bit probably from 2112 to Signals.
So you don't. So Caress is still.
I just started listening to all of Caress's Steel.
So answer me this question.
So
we're
bizarre.
going down a very deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's do it.
So if we lose some people here, we'll bring you back. There's a track on there that I think he recorded backwards. It's just a drum track, Dick Dax and Narpitz. I think the track is actually. I think they recorded it, and then I think they ran it around and ran it.
Is that where he's going? Where Getty's shouting over the thing? Yeah.
Is it backwards?
I don't know. I'd have to listen to it again. It's weird though. Boy, is that a bizarre record.
When I was a kid, I'd put these like little white Sylvania headphones on. I got right. I plug it into this cheap stereo, and I would like lay on my bed in the dark and listen to stuff, and it was just like it gave me all the reason in the world to be horrified, but I wasn't. But I kind of wasn't. It was weird.
Yeah. That was their first 3 records.
Bite Torn the Snow Dog. I mean, what a classic freaking song that is, right? Holy shit.
I was just telling somebody, I was telling my son that there's a bootleg from, what was 84? That was Grace Under Pressure.
Yeah.
There's a bootleg floating around out there where they're Geddy's talking about something, and somebody in the audience, whoever is near the person bootlegging, he goes, "For F's sake, buy tour!" And he's like, because he wants them to do buy tour.
Yeah, because they were going into that new wave era.
Right,
Yeah, they're trying to leave some of that stuff behind.
It's like bitching at Rush to do buy tour of the Snow Dog. It's hysterical.
That's the best ever.
Yeah, their early. I mean, I remember buying the first record just because it was it was that logo.
Yeah,
and it was like, okay.
Yeah, baby.
And then I knew most of that. And then I think the next thing, after I got, it was probably
Fly By Night. Hold on, let's talk about Fly By Night, because I have said this for
that's the one I'm not real familiar with. But yeah.
Okay, I'll challenge you to take a hard listen to that record. There is something. Okay, so to wind it back even further, I am of the belief that Terry Brown was so instrumental to that band's sound for the entire time through Signals.
Yeah.
That they actually lost something. They lost me a little bit when they started experimenting with new wave in the 80s and then brought in different producers for different records.
Yeah, I agree.
Brown, so the way Brown, I think it was Brown, who engineered the drum tone on Peart's first record with them, which was Fly By Night.
Yeah.
The recorded tom sound is so fucking good. It's so damp. There isn't any reverb on it. There's no the snares. The snare's a little loose, but the tom tone.
I have to listen.
Listen to the fills and the tom tone, how it's recorded. It's so good. It's just so damp and without reverb.
The one in Fly By
Night. Listen, so if you take that critically, and then it kind of it was weird as it went on, but that record is something, and that might have been his first. That's Peart's first record with them, right?
Is it? Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, that's the second one.
The tone
right?
on the drum, the tom tone on that record, it to me is intoxicating with headphones on.
There's, somewhere, like we were saying, like somewhere in the 90s, I think, again, I'd have to talk to some of my engineer friends about this, but everything got so overly compressed.
I hate it.
Where it just took a lot of the character out of all the instruments.
For sure.
I was a big REO
digital too, right?
I was a big REO Speedwagon fan. Okay, and I remember when they, High Infidelity, great record front to back.
No
okay,
doubt.
And then Good Trouble, their excuse of it was they were rushed to get it out because they were trying to stay on top of that. Yeah. And then you got to Wheels Are Turning, which I Can't Fight This Feeling. Again, blows them up. Yeah. And what's neat about that era is it gave all those bands that all they did was tour in the 70s. Yeah. It gave them new life in the MTV era.
No question.
Then you start going. Let's just pick a random year, like 85, 86, around there. You could tell that. And then, obviously with the hair metal and the pop metal and the pop rock stuff, it got so
real
much
processed.
Got so much more slicker. But my God, it just kind of, especially drums, it took a lot of the life out of the drums. There's no definition between the tom-toms.
Yeah, the toms especially.
And Neil, he had 12 of them or however many he had. So every one of them had its own, you could tell, he's going from the 8 to the 6 to 8 to 10 down to 12 and across all the other stuff. They all had their own tone. And even somebody that had like even just a 5 tom-toms, if you had a 10, a 12, a 13 and whatever on the floor, or an 8, a 10, a 12, they all had like Manu Katché. I mean, from like what is his stuff with Peter Gabriel and stuff, especially on the live stuff. Like you could, like there was so much definition between all of the tones of the drums. Somewhere along the way, it just got like I always bag on Winger. Not bag on Winger because I love Winger, but Rod Morgenstein's the drummer, right? And the toms on their first record, it sounds terrible. So you go back to that, like go back to Rush. I mean, that's the way he played. He used all that stuff. You had to have it. It had to be.
Yeah, I just think there's something maybe it was a quirky thing, or maybe it wasn't even planned. But however they recorded the tom, however they put those mics in those toms. And then ultimately the output of that, whether there was just no excess reverb, it was real damp and really good sounding, man.
It's
and it
thick.
just and
it's
it
a
right
sound.
but just but a lot of feeling. Like it didn't have a lot of echo.
Yeah.
It just really tight.
It was more organic, and even on like
the perfect word.
Yeah, and
That's
even on like
word.
even on like I think what Neil even said. Moving pictures is when Rush was born. It's when he kind of felt that.
I so disagree with that. As a fan, I so disagree
probably,
with that.
Right? I would say hemispheres or permanent waves.
Okay,
but
permanent waves or let me ask this question: either or, which is better to you as a fan? Permanent waves or moving pictures?
I think didn't we have this conversation?
I had this conversation online. I don't know if you participated or not.
I think I sent you this.
I think you actually kind of slid out of that.
I may have weaseled out of that conversation.
Well, now you're on the spot, buddy.
No, I got to go with moving pictures.
Oh.
I do. I do. And you know what, though? Again, it might be, it's so personal, though. You know what I mean? It is. It's like, that's when I found them.
100%.
That's when I found them. And what's permanent waves is what? Permanent waves is Spirit of Radio. I don't know. Free Will.
Natural Science. Jacob's Ladder. Entree New, and one other song. I can't remember.
What's on the other side? Yeah,
well, I think it's 3 and 3. I think it's.
I'm going other side of the album.
I think it's Spirit. Wait, it's Spirit of the Radio, Free Will, and Natural Science.
Yeah,
and then it's Entree New. There's another song. Then there's Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, maybe.
I think.
No. Wait.
one.
Permanent waves. No, you might be right.
I'm missing one.
I'm thinking Cygnus X1, but that's off of Farewell to Kings.
X1 is Farewell to Kings. Yeah. Cygnus X2 is Hemisphere.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Hemisphere is
it's
wild.
So weird, but I love that stuff.
Yeah, the whole first side of Hemispheres is badass. And
Xanadu.
And then Xanadu's.
The thing is, so you're going to take moving pictures on there.
Again, you got to give me a wiggle. You got to let me wiggle a little bit here because it's one. Like I said, it's where I found them.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. I just find it fascinating that Neil Peart would say that because this is how I feel. After moving pictures, I liked Signals. There was a couple decent Subdivisions is a cool track.
Yeah.
And, there's a couple others on New World Man. But ultimately, each record had a hit or so. One that was written for the radio, generally. An attempt to do it. Or album rock radio.
And at that point, they were by
MTV. It was
MTV. I don't mean to interrupt you, but by Permanent Waves, they were like, we need to get away from La Villa Strangiata. We need to get away from 18 minutes of us.
No, but and that's cool. And I think, but Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures are kind of opuses.
Yeah.
But everything after that, to me, sent Rush in a completely different direction. I find it fascinating that Peart prefers what came after than what came before.
I know.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Because if you ask any fan that probably is our age from that era, they're going to if you ask about Rush tracks, they're going to take before Moving Pictures.
Yeah.
Generally, right?
I'll take a lot of it though. You know what I mean? It's I don't know.
It's so different. That band had so many they've had so many eras, right? Like, how do you even classify that?
Like, I remember when Counterparts came out.
Yeah, I love it.
And I was like,
that was a good
I don't
record.
even know that. Yeah, and I'm like,
Animate.
It's like weird. This is strange to hear them again. It was almost like,
but different.
Yeah, like. They didn't I thought they I think was Counterparts before or after he lost his wife and daughter?
Before.
Okay, so it's right before.
Yeah, this was 90. Counterparts was 93, I believe.
Okay, Test for Echo was when he
96.
came back. No, okay, Test for Echo was right before.
Yes,
because he lost them in 97.
Yes, and then Vapor Trails.
Vapor Trails is the one. So yeah, those I'm not even familiar with those records. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know anything off of Vapor Trails. And again, like you said, they're a band that you can come in and out of at any point, but probably find something.
There's
to dig from them at any point.
You're right, and I'm guilty of taking. When I think of Rush, I think of Signals Down. I like a Song of Power Windows, like a song off of what was the one in '87? And there was Presto, and then Roll the Bones, or Roll the Bones.
Roll the Bones.
Yeah, Roll the Bones. there's always a track or two I can pull off of something.
Yeah,
but,
me too.
But it's not like it don't hold any reverence to it. You know what I mean? It's almost kind of like it's a cool song, but it's not 2112.
And it's like let's also put it in the context of, and again, everybody's different, but like you put. I was talking about this with my son the other day. We were talking about albums as a whole.
Right.
Like you talk about albums as a whole. Moving Pictures as a work of itself is like one of the, it's like, wow. I mean, you could go
hear from start to finish.
You could go from front to back and not skip.
Yeah.
But, Boston's first record. You could go from front to back. Okay.
Absolutely.
That.
Yeah.
I could go from front to back.
I agree. Not everybody can.
Not everybody can. Destroyer. Okay.
Agreed.
Go down. There's always every band has one of those.
Yeah.
Journey.
Fleetwood Mac Rumors.
Yeah. Journey, Infinity.
No
like
question.
you could go from front to back and not. And a lot of that era.
Do you believe those bands wanted their albums to be ingested as a whole?
I think back then. I mean, when you again, let's bring it into two different eras. Those bands not got dragged, but were dragged into the MTV era where it was the singles, okay? And before that, if you're writing material that you've got to at least have a couple things that are going to be on the radio, so you can't fill it up with a bunch of
Rush did.
crap. Well, Rush,
they somehow made it, right?
Let's put
it doesn't make any sense.
No.
It doesn't make any.
I know.
How would that voice in 12-minute songs somehow broke through? I don't get it.
Describe Geddy Lee as a hamster getting its nuts caught in a meat grinder or something like that.
Robert Plant getting a vasectomy.
We didn't even touch on Led Zeppelin. I mean, I'm a.
You dig Bonham, man.
I mean,
what made him so great?
The way he hit. It's the way he hit those things. He's one of those guys that could hit them and get them to speak differently than everybody else could, and when you watch him
weird
play
cadences though, didn't he? He was like, I mean, there's some tracks like you listen to if you listen to like Achilles' Last Stand, which I believe had that song not been written, which is not a hugely popular Zeppelin song, but had that song not been written, Iron Maiden wouldn't exist today. I'm just sorry, without that song.
And again, with Zeppelin, I've got a few albums that I go to. I wasn't
like what?
All in. Well, the first one, the first two.
Of course.
The first
the Brown
one.
Bomber.
Yeah, the first one, and
the
again.
First song on the first record. I mean, can you imagine like being a kid? Like,
again,
had we been 5 or 7 years younger, and like listening to the Monkees and shit, and listen to our parents' Elvis records.
Yeah.
And someone hands you Led Zeppelin 1, and you hear Good Times, Bad Times as the first thing.
And that was one of them. And again, I think Zeppelin didn't, other than Bonham, and then knowing as you get older and you go, okay, I know as much of Rush as that I should probably need to know. Right. Then you start to listen. Then now you're listening. You know what I mean? Okay, you're listening to Bonham, and again, it's Led Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac. Even Steely Dan, I'm more of a greatest hits consumer of that kind of music.
Agreed.
And so but watching enough of Bonham and listening to enough of Bonham, he had, they call it, like Jim Keltner played with John Lennon and he was on the traveling. I mean, he's been on a ton of stuff, but I'm not real deep into Keltner's playing, but he had a term for it. It's called the lilt, there's a way that he phrases his or the way he places his backbeat slightly behind or slightly ahead or dead on. Bonham seemed to have a way of placing his I don't know what it was, the backbeat, because Keltner does it too, and even Mick Fleetwood does it, and him and McVie, what's his first name? John McVie. The way they play together is like, it's magical. There's a feel that the two of them have, like dreams,
Yeah.
Like every time I hear that, I'm like, boy, these guys are like, they're just dialed into each other. And that probably came from just playing together for years and years. And Bonham's had that, like he had that lilt to his playing, that it was not really between a shuffle and straight. But it was unlike everybody else's. You know, you could sit 12 drummers down and have them all play the same beat. You would be able to pick out Bonham. You would be able to pick out what he did. And I remember there was an interview, it was probably a Modern Drummer, that said he could have those big Ludwig Vistalites, or, you know, with the big giant, you know, 14 and 15 inch tom and the giant 4 toms and the 26 inch bass drum. And he could hammer those drums and get those drums to speak. Then he would sit down on Jason's kit, on his kid's kit that had like an 18 inch, but, you know, was a tiny kit, and he'd sit down and play them, and it would sound just like the other kit. And they were like, there's just no explanation for how he would. And he would get like really pissed at engineers when they would start moving the microphones around on his kit. He was like, just leave them where they are. He's like, I'll play dynamically. I'll make this work. You don't have to, don't touch anything. Just leave it there. And I mean, you know.
And but it was weird about Zeppelin too, because I don't think John Paul Jones and him ever kind of got into a groove. There was all like autonomous shit going on in that band.
I agree with that. I would agree with that, because they didn't have a lock the way, like,
another band that also did not have a lock and was doing that too. As a matter of fact, you can make an argument that the guitarist and the drummer were more in sync than the bassist, and that'd be Sabbath. Bill
Again,
Ward,
I was not a fan.
Yeah.
So I can't.
Bill Ward had a jazz kind of swing thing going on, and he was never really in lockstep with the bass player.
Yeah.
Weird.
That was they weren't my bag.
Weird dynamic to it.
But I think you know, what's strange is when you talk about bass players and drummers. You know, I'm a huge Journey fan. I'm a Journey fan from Infinity to Raised on Radio.
Okay.
After that, not so much. Before that, I think I'm going to have to go and listen to some of the first 3 records before Steve Perry, because I just for whatever reason just never got around to listening to them. Right. But I hear they're really good, and I'm a huge Greg Raleigh fan.
Right,
I mean, Greg, that voice, and then when Steve came in, you combine those two voices, those thick, dense, multi-track harmonies, gorgeous. What's funny is, Ross Valerie was a great bass player, or is a great bass player. Steve Smith, a great drummer, and so was Ainsley Dunbar. And you could tell that Steve Smith was, even when he was playing in Journey, had a schooled approach to playing, because he would, you know, him and Ross, like a song like with the big hit, Who's Crying Now? Yeah. You can hear how they're playing together. They're hitting together, the bass drums following the bass guitar. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. So they would kind of lock in, and then kind of.
Is that called being in a pocket?
Being in a pocket, yeah. They had their own pocket in certain places.
Okay.
Then on Raised on Radio, I think they used 3 drummers. I think they used Steve Smith, Craig Camp, and Larry London. And I remember hearing, and I think Ross Valerie's on a few things, but then Randy Jackson was playing bass on all.
Right on.
Okay. And I remember, and me and Matt Muckle had this discussion a few weeks ago. And I remember in high school hearing I'll Be All Right Without You. And I thought, boy, what is it about this track that I love this track? I don't know what it is. I mean, Steve Perry's the voice, so almost anything he does is you got to appreciate that voice, you know. But I remember hearing that, and it's a very simple thing. It's you know, 1 and 3 on the bass drum, 2 and 4 on the hi-hat, little flourishes on the hi-hat, little fill-ins here. But Larry London, who was a large man, Nashville drummer,
right,
and you know, Randy Jackson, who I didn't know who he was at the time, but obviously he played on all kind of stuff. Boy, those two locked together on that, and you could tell that their pocket together was deep. It's a deep pocket, and that's special. There's just a special vibe to some stuff like that. Yeah, really is.
Did you? I don't know if I've listened to enough of it, concentrating on it to determine whether Watts and Wyman, the Stones, had a pocket or had a groove to it. I never really.
Well, Charlie also had that different lilt. He had that, and you know, the thing where he would lift his hi-hat, wouldn't play his hi-hat with a snare drum a lot of the time.
What was that thing where he would like fake the hit?
Yeah, he just wouldn't play. Whenever he played 2 and 4 on the snare drum, he would not play the hi-hat. So it gives
a quirky look,
a quirky thing, yeah. But it works.
Obviously worked,
yeah. So I don't know. Like, are they great players? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In their own style.
I never thought they were really that tight, like.
The other thing with that too is the Stones were a lick driven band. So.
And Keith was always behind.
Yeah. But Keith. I mean, you can't.
He was always behind. And Ronnie played more bum notes in the history of music than any guitar player. And he never got fired.
Those guys are. Again, it's a vibe. It's a band vibe. You can't. And like that's interesting because my two main gigs. And I don't even call New Community Church is not a gig to me. It's a special.
Sure.
It's a special thing. The people are special. The place is special, and we have a great team. Marianne Deal, Matt Mason, they're the leaders of the team. Marianne's jazz piano major from Miami. Matt Mason works with Urban Impact, and Matt he's a talent. To watch him work with vocalists is something. Where the hell was I going with this? Oh man, I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about Watts and Wyman.
What were we talking about? Damn,
that's all right. Well, let me ask.
Oh no. Okay, yeah, it was the Stones. Okay, so the two gigs I do are that. Okay, again, not really a gig. It's like really like home.
Right.
And then Nomad is my.
Yep.
Okay, is a band, and we're we're kind of a country band, but we're not like a modern country band. We're more like a song band. Like we have song. We write our own material.
I hear like classic rock in some of your stuff. Too,
we
right?
are. We're a rock band that decided we were getting nowhere with rock, but what I saw when I saw my first couple country shows, it was like Keith Urban, Toby Keith,
for sure.
And I'm like, these guys are rockers. They're just playing rock, and they got a banjo and a fiddle in it. So but so there's that, and then playing in a wedding band. Three Rivers Entertainment. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun. Like all these gigs are great gigs. These are gigs that I would do. Do I wish I played more jazz? Yeah, I do. I do wish I could do even just to go when I have some time to go sit in and some of the jam sessions and play. But the one thing that I hadn't done in a long time was just straight ahead rock and roll. Okay, like just get out there and bash some, Stones and Faces or whatever. So Rocky Lamonde last year, their drummer was having some health issues. Right. I think he had diverticulitis, Matt, and so he's like, I was recording some stuff for a guy named Dom Fusca, who is kind of a swampy New Orleans type thing. So he just released an EP. And it's definitely cool. It's great stuff. And when we were in the middle of recording it, Rocky goes, "Yeah, we're gonna have to cancel some shows. My drummer's sick." I'm like, "Don't cancel anything. I'm not real busy. Give me your material. I'll sub for him as soon as he's better. Come back."
Right on.
So they gave me the stuff, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is great." It's like just straight ahead rock, and the guys are great, and it's really just. It's just fun to not, and I sing a lot in Nomad. Right. So it's always very liberating to not have to sing because you could just play,
easier, yeah.
It's just one less thing to have to deal with. So that was a blast. And then Matt called me about the Guns N' Roses band.
Yeah.
They're called Yins and Roses. Okay.
Yins and Roses. That's pretty good.
Yeah, okay. So they've got some shows booked toward the end of the year.
Oh, is this like, so you don't have to dress like them too,
no,
do you?
No.
Okay.
Well,
it's not like a tribute band, right?
It is, but it isn't. I would say, I have to say it is. I'm in the back, so nobody knows that I don't look like Steven Adler. If I have to, if they want me to do anything,
Sorum, right?
If they want me to do anything, I'll do Matt Sorum. I'll put a bandana and some sunglasses on and some chains, and I'll do that. That's fine. But I'm not, I don't think I'm gonna be Steven Adler anytime soon. But it's fun. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's fun to just play rock and roll. To just just to get out and beat the snot out of those drums. Man. So I mean, but I've always liked a lot of stuff. I like a lot of music. I love to play. It gets a little it's a little more difficult when you get older to schlep gear and then you have a hip replaced and, and you get out of shape. And
you got to have a passion for it though, right?
But yeah, it's, last week I played 4 gigs.
Yeah,
and I haven't done it, like you said, with COVID and everything, I haven't done it in a while. And yeah, it beat me up a little bit. It's Tuesday and I'm still recovering, but I'm going to do it again next week.
Those rich drummers got it easy, man. Someone comes and set up their stuff, and they just kind of like show up. And
here's a great story. Bob, and I always say this, Bob Dylan told me to never drop names, but Nomad was playing on a second stage for Brooks and Dunn show out at Star Lake. It's going to be, I don't know what it's called now. It's forever going to be Star Lake to me.
Yeah, right on.
And through Modern Drummer, an article in Modern Drummer, I noticed that the drummer was using some technology. He was using a sample pad or whatever it was at the time that was new. And I think in the article they even gave his email. So I emailed him. His name's Trey Gray. And this reminded me of what you say about schlepping gear. So I emailed him and we were kind of talking about this piece of equipment, like what does it do? And cause I use a drum cat with a sampler and some other things. And he's like, we were talking about the gear. And I said, hey, listen, we're actually playing before your show. We're opening the day at the second stage, wherever the hell that was, And I said, if you get a minute, swing by, not thinking that he would actually do it, but I said, just swing by if you get a chance. It'd be nice to say hi to you. So sure enough, he swings by. He stays for a little bit of the set and he walks up the steps on the side and he said, hey, I got to go back and do a couple things, but I'll be back by the end of your set. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So he comes back and we're chit-chatting a little bit and I'm tearing down my kit. And he goes, where are you parked? And I said, I'm parked behind this fence here, which is really nice because I don't have to drag this stuff 6 miles to my car. And he's like, oh, cool. I'll help you carry it out.
Oh, right.
And I'm like, dude, I think you've kind of earned the right. You're touring with Brooks and Dunn. Like you don't have to like schlep gear anymore. Okay.
You guys are all in fraternity,
and he's like, look, I'm sitting around all day.
Yeah.
He's like, let me help you take your stuff out.
Yeah.
So he did. And then he took me backstage and introduced me to the guys in the band and showed me his kit. I mean, we've met some people that have been remarkably nice.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine, Mark Arnold. He's got a hard name to say. Mark Arnold. He was Keith Urban's tech, and Nomad opened for Kenny Chesney at Heinz Field.
Right.
We won the Next Big Star contest, and we did that. And that, you talk about an eye opener. I know you said you wanted to get into backing tracks and stuff like that. So this is kind of dovetailing into that. So Mark is a guy that he was Keith's drum tech. Then he went on to tech for Taylor Swift. And you talk about we'll get to that in a minute.
Production.
But these people that I've met along the way, and we've been able to stay in touch, and even through COVID and all that, those guys you talk about guys taking a beating. Those guys that are your touring guys just took a bath. I mean, they were, it was just so hard for them. But Mark, helped me get some endorsement things. And then a guy that I'm very fond of, his name is, we don't talk very often, but his name's Will Denton.
Okay.
He was Leanne Rimes' drummer, and they were on the bill with Chesney, and it was like her, Keith Urban, I forget who else was there, and it was Chesney, and then we opened the day on the main stage. So Will comes up to me after, like I'm in the bowels of Heinz Field trying to talk to my son who's up in peanut heaven. I'm like, so how was it? He's like screaming. He's like, it was great. You guys were great. I saw the big screen and all this stuff. So Will comes up to me and he was just, so gracious. You sound great. You play great. What technology are you using? And I said, well, I'm using a drum cat and all I really have over there is a sampler.
Okay.
And, just a little Roland standalone sampler. And he's like, have you used Ableton yet? And I'm like, no, I've heard, I hear everybody's using this. I don't even own a laptop. I don't, right. I don't use it. And he goes, so gives me his number and he goes in his email and all this stuff. And he's like, from what I see that you're doing, you need to learn how to do this. You need to learn. You should, because the way you play and the things that you're triggering with the stuff that you have,
right.
He goes, you could kind of really open a world of stuff if you learn how to do this. Like, okay, great. So save my gig the rest of the year, start saving my money, buy a MacBook, buy Ableton. And I think it was the next summer, he was playing with a different act and they were in the middle of Ohio. And he's like, hey, can you get out to the show? And it's only like an hour and a half away. And I said, yeah. So this guy, I go up to the show and he sits in my car with me and starts walking me through how to use Ableton the way I'm using it with my drum cat. And it's like, you wouldn't think that somebody, on that level would take the time to
fraternity though, right?
Yeah, I guess, I guess it really is. Cause I would do it. Cause people ask me about it and I'm like, man, let's get together. We'll grab a pizza and we'll sit and, we'll
those guys too. I mean, once you get a certain level of fame too, you get tired of the same old conversations. And you'd rather talk to someone in your own field. It's like, or if you're dealing with fans and, hey, how you doing?
Even in Dorsey stuff, it's I've got a regional deal with Sabian cymbals and a regional deal with Evans drum heads, and at first I was reluctant to even do it because I'm like, who am I? I'm like, I'm nobody. I'm just a guy that plays, doing my thing like a bunch of other guys.
You never turn it down,
man. But Mark was saying, he's like, it's guys like you that really do deserve it. You're the guy that's playing, you're not making road money. You're not making big, you're not making huge, you're making a living, but you're not getting that. And I don't get anything for free. I still have to pay for everything. Of course. So, but, and again, who am I? I'm just some guy that plays drums. But that was like, guys that do things like that for other people, it's so gracious. They don't have to do that. Of course not. And you find that, you get those guys that you can count on for, advice. It's more, now it's a hang when they're in town or advice and stuff. They're like Will. I haven't seen Will in forever, but I think we actually played before. Who's the band he was with? The Farm, and we opened for them at the South Hills at a South Hills Rib Fest. Got to be 7 years ago.
Wow!
But we to hang out for that, and we're swapping Ableton stories and stuff. It is good. So let's go. That kind of smashes right into.
All right, yeah, we got to before we end this madness day. We have to talk about backing tracks. So a lot of the legacy bands. I'm talking about the bands that are still out there. Aerosmith, Kiss, Styx, Journey, and all the incarnations of that stuff. And it goes all the way up to, I guess you can say, Guns N' Roses in there, going all the way through the 80s. A lot of them are using a lot of backing tracks after they've gone on the record for many years prior, talking about how they don't.
I think the band you're referencing begins with a K and ends with an S, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and it's really bittersweet for me. And I'm not saying this to be critical for the sake of being critical. Sure. I just thought that there was a lot of, there's a lot of denial that it's happening, which is nuts because there's all kinds of proof that it obviously is happening. But they went on for 10 years. 10 years ago, it was always about how, there's no guys under the stage. There's nobody doing this. Yeah. There's no flying monkeys playing bass over here. Everything is what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's not what's going on right now. And they're trying to hide it the best they can. And I even understand why they're doing it. It's not for me, but I understand why they're doing it. But the idea that not just them, other bands won't do it either. They won't come clean and say, look, we are enhancing our show to give you the best possible. We have some limitations going on. They don't have to mention their age. I can say just limitations in general to put the best show on. We need a bigger sound. We're going to give it to you. Something like that, right?
Right.
But when you deny it, it comes a story.
I've never ever skated around that issue with anything I do. Like, there's the computer, there's the controller.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Some of it, Nomad does very little vocal anything. There may be some oohs and ahs here, but we don't do anything vocally with that. Okay. Yeah. We use it to cover the things that we don't have. I mean, otherwise you need a 8-piece band up there,
Is it expected from the fans now? Like,
I think we've gotten to a point where it doesn't matter. Okay. Again, I'll go on record by saying I was mortified to hear of a country act that went out without a bass player. It's almost, I'm like, I don't care what kind of budget you're on. How do you go out without a bass player? Okay, so look at that look on your face. It's incredulous, right?
It's crazy.
I mean, so, you know, I kind of like, well, back in the day, guys like Mr. Mister were doing it. They were, you know, Pat Mastelotto was triggering all kind of stuff. And I think when it's on a performance level, I mean, that's kind of, we have some songs that are tracked front to end, and others are looped. There's loops, you know, there's things that I turn on and turn off. When you're doing that, I almost always play to a click. But I think when you're enhancing a show, I think you're making good use of the technology. When it is your show, how far removed from a karaoke act are you? You know, and I hate to criticize that because, you know, you know, back in the day, it used to be, you know, I remember reading an article about Bon Jovi that said that they played, you know, let's go back to New Jersey, Slippery When Wet, you know, when they're bang, you know, played like 280 shows a year.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. And sound checked every one of them. And, you know, how do you do that? You know, how do you keep that?
He's wrecked right now.
Yeah, oh yeah,
it's
not pretty.
Last year of shows for him,
something's
going on there.
And yeah, it's a shame. I mean, you don't want to see.
No,
you don't want to see that.
You feel bad for them.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. I mean, because I do it and I use it. It definitely enhances things. You know,
but there's no effort to hide it. See, there's no effort to disguise it. I think the disingenuous thing comes when you disguise it.
Yeah,
and I don't. At first, I said, well, I don't know what I don't like worse. Am I okay with additional vocal support?
Yeah,
and I don't like the extra guitar tracks. And I guess, you know, with Kiss, I knew there was going to be some extra vocal support.
Yeah.
I got that. Yeah. Paul's 70 years old. I get it. And he sings the highest register imaginable. Yeah. I get that. But they've got guitar tracks in there too. And that's the thing.
I'm not sure why it's necessary. There's two of them up there.
It's a little disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's kind of disappointing too. I mean, it's like, again, I understand it.
Yeah.
And you know what? The sellout crowds just don't care. And that's all that really matters in the end. It's hard for me to get there for any act, not just them, any act. If I'm paying for live, I kind of want to see live.
Yeah. I want to hear Deuce the way it was in
Gene
73.
Can sing pretty well. I think Gene can give it to you. Tears Are Falling. I'm not sure that's going to be.
Maybe not. Yeah.
That's not going to be entirely
more like My Way.
Authentic.
He's like way up. Yeah.
Especially that last part of that song. That one note.
And you know what's funny is I kind of don't mind that era of them.
I like that era too.
Really
I like all eras of that.
Yeah, band. I don't mind that era. I think their left turn was the grunge thing that they tried to do.
That one album.
Yeah, which it's like, guys, it's not necessary
Carnival
for me.
of Souls.
It's not. I mean, and I've never even heard it. Yeah,
listen to it.
It's like, you know, when you're talking about, you know, call all your friends in the neighborhood and get the party started to go into this self-loathing BS. It's like, and even that whole style of music, I don't bag on it because I try not to bag on anything.
Right.
But, you know, I totally tuned out at that point. You know, I
never got grunge, but again, it's my age. So
right.
I was,
but even then, like I couldn't come home from, you know, at that point in my life, I was starting a family,
right.
You know, times were tough and I was still working in a restaurant and, you know, struggling to get by. Mm-hmm. I don't want to turn on the radio and hear songs about, you know, kids going berserk in class or, you know, how much, you know, I'm miserable about, you know.
It didn't last long, though.
It lasted too long.
Well, we had about 5 years,
yeah,
but I mean, and some songs that came out of that era are classic songs.
Yeah, sure,
but
sure.
At the era of that, by the mid '90s, because here's the thing, by the mid '90s, you know, we weren't in any wars. The internet was starting.
Yeah.
Things were pretty good.
Yeah.
There was really nothing to be real pissed off about. I mean, there really wasn't.
But yeah, I mean, and then I think the quality of player and performance took a bit of a nosedive. Billy Joel, I think Billy Joel was quoted as saying, "What, you can't play, you can't sing? Guess what? You're our guy." And it's like, boy, it's kind of accurate.
Yeah, but again, I think that's also symptomatic of technology, and you can make the argument that the 80s ushered in a lot of techno kind of music, and they blended technology and music, and we can make all the arguments in the world whether it was good or it was bad. It just is. It's just the way it is.
Sean McDonald. Okay, do you know Sean?
Yeah.
Sean produced Nomad's.
Sean did my show.
Yeah, he did the second Nomad record, and Sean is so good at what he does. Sean said to me one time, he goes, "Do you like sausage?" And I said, "Yes, I like sausage." And he goes, "If you like sausage, just eat sausage. You don't ever want to see how it's made." Okay? He goes, "You could kind of make that argument for music after a certain point." Okay? If you like music, just like music. You don't want to know how it's made anymore, And I'm not saying Sean does that sort of stuff. I mean, Sean's a pretty organic. He's an organic guy. Sure. I mean, it's drums, mics, amps, guitar, sound, microphones, and he knows his stuff.
It's a very good point, though.
But if you're a consumer of music, you really don't care. You really don't care what it is. Now, if you're more of an enthusiast or you're a player, to me, it's unforgivable to go out there without a bass player. That's just you've got to be kidding me. But.
That's reality. I mean,
again, how far are you taking it to the point where it's karaoke, but that's also a function of what's popular. I mean, American Idol, all this sort of stuff. I mean, and not only that, but it's the concept of a band is gone.
Yeah, so but music
in pop music,
but musical in gen. So when downloading started, naturally, commerce, the commercial end of music got the ass torn out of it. I get all that.
Yeah,
but the broader problem, I think, is that youth, and maybe not just youth, we started to devalue music.
Oh, there's no question.
When it becomes just something in the ether that I'm going to go grab with no consequences to my pocketbook. We don't value it. So if there's no value for music, you can see why ticket prices are so high. It's the only revenue opportunity for these bands
that they have. And
it's disposable now.
Music is disposable is the perfect word. And I've been saying that for years. I have two sons, 30 and 23. And they were still in the era, so Nick was born in 99, Luke was born in 91. So they were still in this era of the CD where you could get something tangible.
Love it.
Right? Yep. See, and I love CD. Everything I owned on vinyl, I ended up buying again on CD. So I'm wondering if all those bands had a windfall of, you just sold your albums twice,
pretty much.
Okay, good for them. That's great, But I think I forget which one of them said it, but it's like, there's nothing tangible in a download. What do now you go online and you can learn everything about your artist, okay? When this was tangible, all I knew about these guys was what I saw.
The best thing ever.
Right, okay? It didn't matter who it was.
You knew what the album smelled like. You knew who the production manager was. You knew these companies' names who did the advertising.
Right, and you knew who was playing on it. You knew who the band was, and it was just enough to make you go, I can't wait until these guys come to town. Now it's too much.
There's
You're
nothing overloaded. There's no mystery.
There's no mystery. It's taking all the mystery out of it. And like he said, it's not something I can hold on to.
It's not tangible.
Right.
We consume our media right now in a non-tangible way. It's like if I want to enjoy music, I wanted the whole shebang. I wanted that album. I wanted the album sleeve. I wanted to carry it around with me when I was at school. It was like it was a thing.
Yeah.
Now it's completely disposable.
Yeah.
And they don't even want to release albums now. Artists are just releasing singles.
And it's funny. Now we're in 1950. or 60 where, like, what was the thing with the Beatles? It was they released singles and then they put out albums, and none of the singles were on the albums. So
pretty genius.
Yeah, you know. So we're gonna get all this extra music after getting the hits, but that was the only way you could get it.
Right.
So it didn't matter what it was. Well, I mean, it's something Beatlemania. I mean,
rock was a Beatle thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Album rock was a Beatle thing, and the proliferation of FM radio was just so great. The early 70s, mid 70s,
do you remember
late 70s.
On DVE the album sides at midnight?
Was it what was that called? There was for headphones only.
It was a headphones only, later. And then there was on Saturday nights at midnight. It was an album side, or maybe it was a little, or it might have been 11 o'clock.
Cool.
And that's where I first heard 2112 was an album, first side one of 2112, and like Ozzy, even like Ozzy, you know, it was like the first
1980.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you could hear a whole album side, and you know, again. You know, well, I'll almost always bring things back to Kiss, but you know, Gene Simmons, for whatever people think about him, was so unbelievably correct when he said that the people that started Napster should have been prosecuted. They should have been arrested and prosecuted because you basically are giving away somebody else's work. And, and you know,
100%.
And then I forget who else is telling me. That it wasn't just that, but it was the record executives who were, you know, they were all these old harumph guys in suits and, you know, stogies, and, you know, they were all in their 60s and 70s when the internet hit, thinking this is a passing fad. This is never going to be.
Right.
Instead of figuring out
how to monetize it from the beginning, or at least invest in the software companies that try to combat what was going to happen.
Right.
Once the cat was out of the bag, that was too late.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and then, but like you said, you listen to music, like what would you pay for today? When you were saying how disposable it is.
I mean, when you think about what goes into an actual album, I mean, I don't what I would pay for it and what a 20-year-old would pay for it when they've been getting it free forever.
Right.
I mean, an album should be at least $25.
Yeah, but you know, at the current rate of inflation, well, not the current rate of inflation, but like
not currently
as the graduating scale of inflation over the last
we're
30 years.
$6.99, you know, whatever that was back in '77. You know, a double record in '77 was probably like $9.
Yeah. You're probably right. $9, $10, $11 bucks.
But like $25, $30 seems rational. I mean, like I think when CDs were still a thing in the late '90s, like Kiss put a CD out, it'd be like $16.99, $17.99 a single. Then again, they started compressing the data on those CDs where they could fit double albums on one disc.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard to figure out. Like I used to love when CDs were young because I think they could have still put all that data on one disc, but they would give you two CDs.
Yeah.
They give you two, you know what I mean? It's like, you feel like you feel like you're getting something that emulated the record experience.
I was just as bad at taking care of my CDs as I was my records, and that's a shame.
Oh, man.
It's a shame.
And you did lose something with the moving from albums to CDs in terms of like it was big and the inserts, but at least the CDs you were able to get. And again, I'm a couple years older than you, so
you still got a booklet. You still got a booklet.
You got a booklet. All that stuff was there. You could research about the band, but now you have nothing. Buying a digital download is absolutely flipping worthless. You can see why it's not valued.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't get nothing.
Like, again,
a band like Kiss couldn't make it today. You needed to have that stuff.
Yeah,
the stuff that went with it.
Well, I don't even think. We did press CDs for our last EP, and you know, I'm hoping that Nomad can have some new music out by the fall, at least a single, maybe 2 or 3. But you know, it makes me wonder: is it even worth putting it on something tangible? Is it even worth doing that? We were selling it on flash drive too, which, you know, that kind of makes a little bit of sense because now you have it. You could put it on. You can put it on any device you have, so that makes sense. And I probably sound like an old.
People just don't want to pay for it, man, which is just nuts. Like because again, it's not valued. People like it and they enjoy it when they're out live. They get it, but they don't get it in terms of having to spend their hard money. I mean, the guy will go to the bar and buy a round of drinks and tip the bartender $35 for a round of drinks, but they won't they argue over a flipping cover chart.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's a funky area.
It always has been. It's
Yeah.
for as long as I can remember. It really has been that, it's like, if it isn't worth it to you, you obviously have the choice to pick up your feet and walk
Right,
out the door,
of
walk
course.
away from the door, but I mean, like we need to put, and it doesn't matter, like whatever it is you like, go out and support the damn thing, like you said. I mean, if to buy, and think about what a single costs to download. It's
Right.
$1.29
Right.
or whatever it is. Maybe it's $1.99 now. I've got a few, and I'm guilty of it too. I got iTunes. I'm streaming music,
Yeah,
and
most everybody is.
yeah, but a single when I was a kid was $1.
Yeah.
When I saw that Columbia thing, it's like
it's gravel CD, gravel single
that's a
from
beautiful
and that's
thing
from
to see.
'71.
Yeah, I had
Stacks of
them.
them, and they were $1.
They were $1. Yeah,
And now you're paying them for $1.
for
40
nothing.
years ago.
And now you get it, and there's nothing. It's data on your
It's
device.
in the ether.
Yeah, I love those.
And they're all scratchy and shit.
remember you had the adapter that went on the spindle in the
Do
middle.
you still
and
play albums and stuff? Because I don't.
I don't even have I don't even have a functional turntable.
It's like here I am, all this. I'm romanticizing about the album era and what it meant to me and all this stuff. But if you said, "Hey, why don't you go out and buy?" I'll use the excuse. Well, you realize when they press new albums today, they're actually pressing them from the digital. It isn't coming from the actual analog recordings. So I'm listening to a digital version. Anyways, although it's being played analog.
Okay, but don't beat yourself up too much. Like I said, how many of these did you have? How many of these did you buy when they came out on CD too?
I know. Well, I know, but in reality, though, the reason I won't listen to vinyl is because I don't want to buy a turntable. I don't want to fuck with a needle. I don't want to. I just want to.
Remember when the needle went bad and you had to go to NRM and they had to open up a book?
God, dude. And then here's the thing, and then you would have the older kids would always the audio files. They were the audio snobs.
Right.
Oh, you need to invest in a better turntable, and you need to buy a cartridge.
Yeah, the cartridge.
Yeah, you got to buy
cartridge for your realistic
that
or your
needle
Sony.
there. That's garbage. That's a Kmart needle. You need to buy a cartridge for your Pioneer.
Steve Martin, you a Steve Martin fan?
Yeah.
So I bought the Moonrock needle. But, it still didn't sound right, so I did this and that, and then I went, maybe it's the needle,
But that's kids will never understand the problem. The struggle.
And just
it's crazy.
Just to be able to sit and sit there with anything and listen to it. Now we're waxing nostalgic.
That's okay.
We played when I was, let's go from 1980 forward in the area that I lived. And one of the Nomad songs is about this area. It's called American Boy, and it's about growing up in a place that you had everything in the area that I grew up in. I had everything within about a square mile. Yeah. Okay. It's down across on the city side of the Hot Metal Bridge in Lower Greenfield. It's called the Run. Mm-hmm. And we had a tennis under the Parkway Bridge. We had a basketball court, a tennis court, which immediately became a street hockey court. Okay. And a playground next to it. And then you would go up the road past St. John's Church. And there was a swimming pool that was about as big as this room and 3 feet deep. Okay. It was an above ground city pool. Okay. And we would, make an opening in a fence and sneak in at night and swim at night. And then from where we lived, you could get to Panther Hollow Lake. And we would play hockey up there.
Right.
We would drag our stuff up there and play when it froze over. And, after playing hockey, we would go up to the family that owned Big Jim's, Mark Bokikio. He was their family were the Bokikios, and they lived above the restaurant. And we were neighborhood kids, and we went to school with Mark. So naturally, we would go to Mark's room, and they would send up food. And I tell my kids about this all the time. It was like heaven, right? So, what do you guys want? We'll take a pizza, So they send up a pizza, and we'd be in Mark's room playing in television and listening to Journey Evolution.
Of course,
and you could sit there while somebody else was doing whatever, and you had nothing to do. You had nothing to do. So you would stare at the Evolution album cover and just listen to the music while your buddies were playing in television.
That feeling is pretty much gone.
It is gone. And it's like, you can't get too caught up in what was. No. But, I would prefer that over today, And my kids didn't know much of it, and that was also a function of society. You start getting a little in the '90s. You started getting a little wary of letting your kids go out, into the world without being supervised.
Right.
We were gone.
Right.
Yeah, free range
parenting days.
Pretty much. Got on your bike at noon. We're gone.
No tether, no cell phone,
nothing. Yeah. It came back for dinner, went back out at night, get home when the streetlights come on or shortly thereafter.
Yeah, right on.
And
it was different though.
It was. And it makes you think of what our parents what it was like. It was now we had more options, but they lived the same way. You know what I mean?
Technology changed everything. 96 was the date. That was the year that the internet started to get proliferated, then social media, unfortunately, 18 years later. But no, I mean, it is what it is. There's good and bad in every what we think was so fantastic sounds boring probably to the young.
Sure.
But I just think that music in general, something's just missing. It was such an amazing experience, and I think that could have translated to any generation given the opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's just different now.
And like you said, it was the tangible stuff that you had. You know what I mean? You possessed. We
got the stuff.
The stuff, it's like
album,
you got the,
man.
Remember the Love Gun? Remember
all the little trinkets and stuff.
Thing?
The posters and all that.
The solo
stuff.
albums had all the 4 posters and stuff.
That's what made it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
Did you have a good time, buddy?
I did. I had a blast, man.
Yeah,
man. We probably didn't even cover half the stuff that I thought we were going to cover.
We just touched the surface.
I know.
And I'm glad you had a good time.
Oh, I
really
blast,
appreciate
man.
you doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
All right, man. We're going to do it again.
Absolutely.
We're going to do it again.
Cool,
all right, buddy.
Take care.
Hey, before you go, tell them what's going on in your world. What's going on with Nomad?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We got a private thing coming up Friday. I've got something with the Yins and Roses band on Saturday. You know what? Without my phone.
No, that's all right.
I don't know. But yeah, Nomad.
Where's the best way to reach you? Is it Facebook?
It's social media.
Okay.
Yeah. You can get right to me on social media.
Right
I'm very accessible and north of Mason Dixon.
Yep.
Find them. So yeah, but like you said, it's
band.
nice. Thank you. It's nice to be busy again. It's nice to be. And we also just did a live stream thing with Rocky Lamonti, Todd Kazarowski. We did that last Thursday at the Craft House. Turned out wonderfully.
Good deal.
It's so good. So if anybody gets a chance, check that out. You can even buy it. I mean, you can go and buy I think you can still get it.
Where's the stream at?
It would be
YouTube?
on 10 Band. That's Todd's band. Yeah, that's his production company.
Okay.
Yeah, so 10 Band. Or you can probably go to the Craft House website and find it. I should have been a little more prepared.
That's all right.
Stuff.
Dude, it's what we do here. We wing everything.
All right, my man.
Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
all right, man. All right, friends, we're out.